and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuel. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. And it is now time for our Monday morning as opposed to East Coast time, Monday morning live stream. And from what I can hear, the dogs don't seem to be happy, and because the money's just not coming in fast enough. That's their perennial complaint. The money's just not coming in fast enough. Anyway, how are you, Peter?
It's winter. It's dark.
Yep.
I can't believe it's December.
That's all you need to say.
Where does the time go?
Yeah, indeed. So there's a number of
there's a lot of things.
There's a lot of things. So we saw today footage of a meeting of President Bashar al-Assad with the Iranian foreign minister. This was a meeting in Damascus. So Assad still hasn't addressed the nation. He hasn't gone on television to address the nation. Nonetheless, this is, one would have to think this is genuine footage from their meeting. And then, of course, the Russian president, he had a conversation with the Iranian president, expressing, I don't know, their solidarity. One thing that was quite interesting is the statement that was issued by the White House about what's going on in Syria, and I think it's well worth taking a look. In its smarmy dishonesty. Here we have this. This is the statement. It was issued yesterday evening.
Preciously short. Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is not it. This is the one. This is it. It was short. That's it. This was a short statement by Sean Savitt on Syria, and he says here, we are closely monitoring the situation in Syria and have been in contact over the last 48 hours with the regional capitals. The Assad regime,
it's always the regime, yeah.
Exactly. The Assad regime's ongoing refusal to engage in the political process outlined by UNSCR 2254 and its reliance on Russia and Iran created the conditions now unfolding, including the collapse of Assad regime lines in northwest Syria. So it's his fault that he come under attack from terrorists and from
you made us do it.
Aggressors.
You made us do it.
You made us do it, exactly. But this is where it gets interesting. It says, at the same time, the United States has nothing to do with this offensive. Now, this is a classic case of never believe anything until it's officially denied. So the moment he says the United States had nothing to do with this offensive, okay, so it was obviously orchestrated entirely by the United States, or at least it knew about it in advance and gave tacit approval.
Yeah.
And then it says, which is led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, a designated terrorist organization. Well, this is very interesting. So first he blames Assad for his refusal to engage in the political process and his reliance on Russia and Iran. And then he says that this is being led by a designated terrorist organization. Well, how can you negotiate with a designated terrorist organization? How can a designated terrorist organization be part of any kind of a political process? The UN Security Council Resolution 2254 had proscribed any kind of a role for these terrorist organizations. So this is profoundly dishonest. So you first blame it on them, and then you say, oh, this is the designated terrorist organization. Then it says the United States, together with its partners and allies, that's always a giveaway, the partners and allies, urge de-escalation. De-escalation on whose part? How can you have de-escalation when you're fighting against terrorists? And then the United States and protection of civilians, of course, and minority groups, and a serious and credible political process that can end this civil war once and for all, with a political settlement consistent with UNSCR 2054. We will also continue to fully defend and protect US personnel and US military positions, which remain essential to ensuring that ISIS can never resurge in Syria.
Yeah, it's not mentioned that they're illegally under international law, okay?
Right.
And exploiting the natural resources of Syria, which deny them the ability to recover from the dirty proxy war that the United States funded to the hilt, okay?
Yes.
I mean, there's a way to end all of this. You know, all foreign influences leave that are not invited into the country. That'll solve it right there, okay? And the United States has gone on, and it's on the record, how they gleefully want to see Syria continue to be crippled economically and punish their people. This is part of the record. I mean, they're giddy when talking about it. Okay.
Yes,
and the United States didn't know, George. The United States didn't know this. The Israelis didn't know this. There's not even one mention of the organizer of it all, and that's Turkey.
Well, that's again very interesting. They talk about it's a designated terrorist organization. Well, let me think. Who has been supporting, funding, training, financing, facilitating the rule over Idlib? Turkey. The HTS, even somebody like Joshua Landis, and Joshua Landis is basically, he supports the opposition in Syria. I mean, he doesn't support terrorism, but he supports the opposition. Even he has said HTS could not possibly survive without Turkey. So all this is basically facilitated by Turkey. This offensive that they mounted, this isn't just some spontaneous thing. Hey, I've got nothing much planned for this evening. Why don't we just launch an attack on Damascus? So it's obviously a lie. He says nothing there about, well, who is facilitating a terrorist organization? How is that compatible with 2254?
No, George, we said this yesterday. What is this all about, everyone? It's very simple. Unfinished business, okay? They saw an opening to continue the dirty war that started in 2011 and was wound down 2019, 2020. And now this opportunity because of Israel's aggression in the region. This is where we go.
Right.
Now, it's early days. We shouldn't overreact, okay? But it's a pretty grim picture right now. The Damascus doesn't have the resources and the allied resources that it had during the initial proxy war. And this is what Erdogan, amazingly, I mean, this guy, man, don't even let this guy walk your dog, okay? I mean, this is an extraordinary betrayal, okay? Now, what he gets out of this, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure long term, I should say. Of course, he'll say it's all about the Kurds and stuff like this. All right, fine. But as we're speaking right now, thousands of Iraqis are pouring into Syria. We have and I mentioned this to you yesterday, George, during the first part of the proxy war. Iran said that they will not let Damascus fall. They've said that today again. Okay, right. And you just gotta bet your bottom dollar right now. The most angry person on the planet right now is Vladimir Putin.
But that's of course the case because now remember he brought Turkey into this whole Astana process. He sold S-400s to Turkey. He's invariably refers to Erdogan as his dear friend. They're on dear friends now. This isn't even our partners. These are dear friends. And then he launched this. Now, this is also rather interesting because there's all this talk about how, oh, Bashar al-Assad brought this on himself because he should have made nice with Erdogan. But there's a problem with that. I mean, Assad says, first of all, well, I'll make nice with Erdogan when he gets his damn troops out of my country. You know, why should I start making nice with him when he's occupying large chunks of my country? So that's one thing. The other thing is that Erdogan almost certainly would have a price to normalize relations with Syria. The price would be, hey, you turn against the Kurds. You basically launch a war against the Kurds. In other words, we will be allies against the Kurds. But there's a problem there, because then Assad will have really be up against it. Because if he goes against the Kurds, I mean, at least there's a sort of tacit alliance between the Kurds and Damascus. But that's going to antagonize the Americans. So then the Americans will almost certainly start hitting Syria. He's already got a problem with Idlib, with all the terrorist groups, the HTS and the Syrian National Army sponsored by Turkey. So essentially, Erdogan was telling him, well, make yourself even more vulnerable than you are, and then we can normalize relations. Well, of course, Assad said, no, I'm not doing it. You know, you want better relations, get out of my country.
Well, essentially, this is something that I discussed at great length when the Civil War, it wasn't a civil war, it was an international dirty proxy war, okay? Let's always remember that. I disagree with Joshua Landis. He's a dear, dear friend of mine. I disagree with him on that point. But what Erdogan is angling, and what was talked about in official circles, is the partition of Syria and having little statelets. So you have the statelet of Damascus, okay? And that's what they're kind of angling. They've always wanted to break it up and to have feuding rivalries and whatnot. And again, you know, I don't want to make it sound like George and I are ancient or anything, but we remember when Syria was a major power in the region, and it is slowly but surely being disintegrated, okay? That's what they have wanted.
Right. No, I think that's right. Now, you know, it's never been entirely clear what Erdogan's game was.
And it always changes, George.
It always changes, but you know, but let's say he starts off his rule. He promises good relations with all his neighbors. He said this right at the start of his rule. And his dear friend, since we're all on dear friends terms, his dear friend at the time was Bashar al-Assad. I think they even holidayed together. Then he suddenly turned against Assad. It was never explained why he suddenly turned against Assad, and basically wanted a chunk of Syria. So I mean, clearly one part of his ambition is some kind of revival of the Ottoman Empire. So he wanted the overturn the Treaty of Sèvres, which was this territory that belonged to Turkey, was given to Syria after World War I. So that he wanted to overturn. But now, obviously, he's very unhappy with the Kurds. But what he's doing here, that makes no sense, because if he makes Assad's very weak, that's only going to strengthen the Kurds, which has already happened. I mean, clearly the Kurds are now actually running rampant.
This is what the Israelis want, George.
Right. That's right. That's right. And again, the Americans are happy. So weakening Assad isn't going to help him with his Kurdish problem. And then, of course, this antagonizes Russia, because Erdogan, he's not going to withdraw from NATO. He's part of the NATO apparat, but nonetheless, he does think it's important to maintain some good relations with Russia. I mean, he bought these S-400s from Russia, but now he's really pissed off the Russians, because clearly, and he knows this very well, losing Syria is a very, very big deal for Russia. And this whole thing has been very painful and very humiliating for Russia. So he's done this, and again, you'd have to wonder, what's he getting out of this?
Well, I mean, also, George and I have covered Erdogan's very colorful rhetoric at times, but I cannot see how this is going to go down well with his base. okay, at all, because obviously he's aligning himself with the United States and Israel. That's not going to go down well with his base whatsoever. His base is kind of like MAGA people in the United States, okay? A very rough equivalent, let's put it that way. But so all of this rhetoric about Israel has to pay a cost, Israel's doing this and that, but he's on the side of the Israelis on this one, and it's really obvious to everyone. It's very. I mean, you won't see it in the New York Times or the Washington Post, okay?
Right.
But in the region, everybody obviously sees which side, who's on which side.
Right. But that's the thing, that he has done nothing. He has taken no against Syria at all. I mean, against Israel whatsoever. He's continued to do business with Israel. He's energy going from Azerbaijan through Turkey to Israel. He hasn't broken off diplomatic relations, so he has done nothing at all to hurt Israel. He makes these pompous, empty speeches about the Palestinians. He's been doing that for years. So whom has he hurt? Well, he's hurt Syria. Now, Syria has actually been supporting the Palestinians. Syria has been a part of the resistance because Syria has been a tacit ally of Iran's and of Hezbollah. So whom is he hurting? Well, not Israel. He's hurting Syria. Therefore, he's hurting the resistance to Israel. So this is a quite everything he's doing here is I don't know. You'd have to say he's showing his true colors here, because he's hurting his dear friend Russia, and of course he's hurting the resistance by hurting Syria. So what the hell is he doing?
Well, I mean, George rightfully pointed out that when he started governing or ruling, whatever word you want to use, what was it? Only friends foreign policy, or no
enemies. It's basically
no enemies
with all of our neighbors. We will have good relations
with all of our neighbors. That's how we started out. Well, right. It's inverted now. Yeah. And also you have to remember, Turkey's not everybody's favorite in Washington right now. They haven't been for a long, long time. And so you think he's going to score points? I don't think so.
No.
Okay. No. I mean, because everybody has. You can go from like neocon to liberal interventionist. So you can go to people like George and myself. We all distrust this guy. Right. Everybody.
Right.
And how Russia-Turkey relations move forward, I'll leave it to you to decide, because I have no idea. That Astana process, Russia invested a lot in that, and now it's a deadlock.
It is, but you know, just have to say, and we were talking about it yesterday. Well, this is what happens when you leave a war unfinished. This was an unfinished war. It was going to blow up at some point. It was 2016. Aleppo was recaptured, and at every year or so, it kind of blew up. 2019, 2020, that was quite a serious one. Then Russians actually killed Turks. And then they had to, make nice with Erdogan. But since 2020, there hasn't really been anything very much. But nonetheless, it was always, as people watching Idlib. Well, what's happening in Idlib? Well, Turkey's position gets stronger and stronger, and these forces are getting stronger and stronger. They're getting armed. Now, why are they getting armed? Because obviously they're going to relaunch at some point their offensive. And this was the absolute moment. One day Israel signs this ceasefire with Hezbollah. Boom! Next day they mount this attack.
And George, you pointed out rightfully, and I think it's worth reiterating. It's a very good observation. Is this whole unfinished business narrative? You're absolutely right, and because the Russians are going to look at using that same prism, looking at Ukraine as Trump comes into office, unfinished business. If essentially Ukraine is unfinished business from the Obama-Biden administration.
That's exactly it, because it was unfinished business. Because again, Russia had its opportunity. 2014, after taking Crimea, Russia intervened. Ukraine clearly wasn't ready. The West wasn't ready. That was the moment when Russia really had the legal authority, essentially, to knock over the coup regime. I mean, so basically, this is a coup regime. They've overthrown the legal, legitimate government of Kiev, namely Yanukovych, and we're going to go in and reinstall Yanukovych. I mean, there would have been a lot of screaming, illegal, invasion, whatever. But then, what does it matter? They're going to do that anyway. So you're just saying,
yeah, right, exactly.
and they can cite all sorts of similar cases when the United States intervened because, hey, there was a coup and our man was overthrown, and so therefore we went in to reinstall the man who was overthrown.
And
in Haiti, Clinton invaded Haiti.
By February 2022, it would have all blown over.
Yeah, that was in the moment, and you say, yeah, sorry, this was a violent coup. The legal, legitimate government was overthrown. There were written commitments that the guarantor powers would maintain the rule of Viktor Yanukovych until the next elections. This was violated. We had to go in and put him back in.
And just, it's an important data point. I don't want to put too much focus on it, but the Russians had just loaned the guy $5 billion. Okay.
Right.
Which is still in the courts, everybody. Still in the courts.
That's right.
These actions have consequences. They ricochet all over the world. And I think that's really important to point out, is that just because someone makes a claim that they want to work towards a certain end, you don't believe them. That's one of the biggest casualties, because George and I have talked exhaustively about the Minsk process. Well, I feel like a complete idiot mentioning that, because the Ukrainians and the Western powers were never interested in it. They've admitted it as much. Okay.
They've admitted it as much. Now, if we talk about Minsk, which went on for 8 years, those of us who were observing it said, what's really going on there? They're building up Ukraine. They're making Ukraine stronger and stronger. Well, with a view to what? They're not just doing it, to while away the hours because they've got nothing else to do all day. Why are they doing it? To relaunch an offensive. I mean, so in Croatia again. Remember the war in Croatia. Well, Croatia was simply already defeated. It was easily defeated by the Serbs and with the help of the Yugoslav army. But then it was unfinished because the Yugoslav army withdrew, and the Serbs were essentially left unprotected, and Croatia was, armed and trained by the Germans and the Americans until in 1995 they pounced and defeated the Serbs. And this is what happens. If you leave something unfinished, this is the way the Americans, the Germans, NATO, the West, that's how they operate. They're just going to use that time to rebuild, replenish their forces, and then mount their attack again. So going back to what you were saying, any attempt by Trump, who's obviously going to come up with this peace plan along those lines, let's just freeze everything in place. And then we'll put the NATO thing, we'll put that on the back burner. And in the meantime, we're just going to pour everything we've got into Ukraine. Absolutely the worst deal imaginable.
Yeah. And also, thanks to Erdogan and his buddy Netanyahu, I guess we can say, Trump's going to be confronted with a hot military situation, which Americans are illegally in Syria. Okay, that's going to be another headache, Donald. Okay, another headache for you. All right, all served up by your political opponents. Okay, and your good friend Netanyahu.
Yeah, that's right.
And Trump is going to say, but didn't I want to get them out of there?
Yeah. No, that's right. That was
because everybody. This is not going to. This is early days of this offensive. This could last years. This is like the stitches have been broken. It's a raw wound again. Okay, right. And the stakes are very, very high. Do you think Erdogan's going to back down on this one? I doubt it.
No, not absolutely. Do
you think the Russians are going to forgive him? No.
And that's really the thing. Now, I read, and I don't know if that's been confirmed, that the U.S. has conducted airstrikes against those Iraqis that were pouring into Syria. I don't know if that's true, but that nonetheless.
I came across it too. I wouldn't want to confirm it one way or another.
Exactly, but it's certainly plausible that if Iraqis or Iranians, members of the IRGC start entering the fight in Syria, that they will be bombed by Israel, and then they'll be bombed by the United States. So again, the United States, happily on the side of the terrorists, the head choppers. And that brings us again with Trump, because Trump, when he came to Syria, first of all, when he ran in 2016, said, "Oh yeah, he's I really like Assad because he's kicking the ass of these jihadis." He got it right during the campaign, and then what did he do when he got into power? Twice he bombed Syria. Twice he bombed. I mean, it wasn't huge bombing, but nonetheless, it was significant. He bombed Syria, didn't bomb the terrorists. So he did kill Baghdadi, which again, fairly pointless kind of activity. But okay.
Well, and killing Soleimani was pointless as well.
Right. The Soleimani was really disastrous because he was the worst thing imaginable for
but the circumstances of it. Netanyahu was egging on Trump to do it, and then at the very last second, Netanyahu, we withdraw from that, and then he does it, and then we weren't involved in that. Of course, he got duped. He got duped.
Yeah, that's right. So if you think, well, what's Trump going to do? I would think Trump is again going to be taking the line of Israel, because Israel's view is that Iran is the enemy, and then we should do everything in our powers to harm Iran, and therefore we should do everything in our power to harm Bashar al-Assad. And I think that's what Trump.
And just over the weekend, our favorite villain, Alan Dershowitz, was all over media saying, they're talking about what's going on in Lebanon, what's going on in Syria, but it's all about Iran. Okay, and the President-elect President Trump, I love that President-elect President Trump. He has to deal with it. Okay, everything is on play. Everything is, the whiteboard is being checked off. Right, just we predicted. Okay, and Trump is going to be saddled with so many headaches. Okay. And his domestic, and I think maybe we could shift to Kash Patel if you want on that. He's going to be overwhelmed, and with this mediocre crew that he has coming in,
right?
God help us all.
Yeah, no, that's right. Now, this is the thing about the when we come to Trump, which is that when it comes to his domestic policy, I mean, I think there's a lot there that one can have sympathy with. I think tariffs, I think, are a very reasonable policy. I think America has allowed itself to be deindustrialized. It's basically other countries have grown and expanded their economy at the expense of the United States. The United States used to have this huge auto industry, and it's been decimated. So that all of that is sensible, and of course, even more sensible is the issue of the deep state, that security apparatus that basically is now no longer under control of civilian rulers, and this is a long-standing problem. I mean, this is a problem that was faced by Kennedy, was faced by Nixon, which is, hey, you've got this huge apparatus that we really don't know what the hell they're doing. I mean, they're just a law unto themselves. I'm the elected president. I want to know what the hell the CIA is doing, and they just stonewall me. They don't tell me what they're doing. So it's a long-standing problem, and I think clearly Trump wants to address that. It's going to be very difficult. Greater presidents than he have failed, but nonetheless,
a really good example. A really good example, just kind of from pop culture here, but Oliver Stone's film on Nixon is very, very interesting because he went. Who was the CIA director at the time?
Richard Helms.
Richard Helms. So he goes. Yes. He doesn't summons Helms to the White House. He goes to see him,
Yeah.
And it's probably true. Okay, I mean he takes license, Oliver Stone, but
A lot of
he
license.
makes his point, and as you know, he wanted these documents. And Helms referred to him as Dick, not as Mr. President. Sorry, Dick. You know, those of us a few years ago realized having your name on something is not a good idea, but your name is. Okay.
No,
I mean,
yeah, exactly. That was a good scene. I mean,
really good
I think there were a lot of problems with that film, but that was an effective scene where he goes
there's a
to
lot of problems with Oliver Stone films, okay, but he gets the thrust of it, and
Right.
that's why I'm a fan. Okay,
Right,
but
right. No, and I think that was the case because Nixon did want a number of uh, issues exposed to the public. He wanted these documents published. I think he thought, particularly when he came to the overthrow and assassination of South Vietnamese President Diem, um, the Bay of Pigs,
Bay of Pigs.
and the Bay of Pigs, and then of course also the Lyndon Johnson and the circumstances why suddenly, 2 weeks before the election of 1968, he called a halt to the bombing of North Vietnam, even though there was no
And
reason for it.
Nixon's people had a hand in that. Okay.
That's right. That's right. And so he went to Helms and said, well, basically we want these documents published. Helms did nothing. Helms absolutely refused to cooperate. So, and we still don't have these documents.
That's circa 1971. Everybody,
Right.
What do you think's happened since?
Exactly. So Trump obviously has a real beef with the with the CIA because that's something really serious business what they did to him through Russiagate. But interestingly, even with Nixon, one of those interviews that he did with Frank Gannon, I don't know, it's on YouTube, and I think Gannon asked Nixon, do you think the CIA had a hand in your overthrow? And he says, I don't know. I've thought about that a lot, but I really don't know.
Yeah, well, his answer is just so old school. That old school mentality doesn't exist anymore. Of course he knows. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course he knows.
But anyway, so Kash Patel, who of course played a major role in the uncovering of Russiagate, because he worked for Devin Nunes, who was the head of the House Intelligence Committee, and he was really the brains of the operation, and he really drafted the Nunes memo. And the Nunes memo, which of course, if you recall, that was in about 2018, essentially said the whole Carter Page, the FISA warrant to spy on Carter Page was entirely based on this Steele dossier. Completely, that they had no other evidence at all that there was anything that Carter Page was doing there was anything untoward. They based it entirely on this Steele dossier, and of course he exposed who financed the Steele dossier. So this was financed by Hillary Clinton. So this was essentially they laundered this fake dossier, which then was used by the FBI. And the FBI knew all about the provenance of the Steele dossier. They used it in order to eavesdrop on Carter Page. It was shocking, and everybody attacked the Nunes memo, the New York Times, and everyone. But it was completely right. Everything that was in the Nunes memo was right. So that's really Kash Patel's calling card.
Well, I mean, it's very interesting. The reactions to Kash Patel's potential appointment. It really, across the board, it was very interesting. Much more galvanized, focused, enraged, praise. I mean, really, over the last 48 hours or so, it's been really quite interesting. Right. I have to say off the top, everyone, he's our ardent Zionist. Okay, so that fits in there.
Right.
I would. What I would really like Kash Patel do. What I would like his mandate to be is to dismantle the FBI. That's what he needs to do.
Right.
And Trump should have it done. I'm not saying there shouldn't be some kind of federal investigative bureau, but that's what it should be: investigating.
Right.
Okay, not all their machinations. Okay, we need that desperately. So I know that that's not going to happen. And then you have Pam Bondi that wants to have the FBI take aside pro-Palestine
Right.
protesters on universities,
Right.
and this is not looking good. Now, obviously, his mandate isn't going to be to dismantle the FBI. What he I would like him to do. I don't, and I think I can speak for George here. I don't want them to duplicate the machinations and the weaponization of the law that the Biden administration. I don't want to see that happen. But I would like to see accountability. I would like to know who was involved.
But that really is the issue,
And that's
because
what I want to see. Okay?
exactly. But that's the issue here, because what we had was really very dark and very sinister. That the FBI took it upon itself to overturn an election result, and they knew that they were lying. They knew that they were practicing deceit, and they decided to go ahead and do it simply because they really didn't like Trump. And you know, we know it from all those text messages by Peter Strzok and Lisa Page that they knew that exactly that what they were doing was going ahead and undermining the incoming president, and that even if they couldn't stop him winning the election, they could essentially launch an investigation and mire him in this investigation, and then set
Insurance
traps.
policy.
Yeah, that was
the
the insurance policy, and that's what they did. So when Comey said in delight at one of these meetings that, you know, he was feted as this hero of the hour, and he was asked, well, you know, that meeting that you had with Michael Flynn when Peter Strzok and another FBI agent went to see him, you know, 3 days. This is about 3 days after the start of the administration. How did that come about? Oh, I just sent them there. And I was counting on the fact that the administration was very disorganized, and that, you know, he would talk to us without having some legal counsel present. And then, of course, even then, Flynn was suspicious enough to say, well, do I need a lawyer present? When Comey just telephoned him, hey, a couple of guys are coming over. Do you mind giving them, you know, 15 minutes of your time? And, you know, Flynn, you know, he had the wherewithal to ask, should I have a lawyer present? No. There's no need for that, because then it gets complicated. You're going to bring in the White House and everyone. Just don't worry. It's just a friendly chat, just friendly interaction. And of course, they used that meeting in order to bring a fraudulent, bogus criminal case against him. That, you know, the statute of limitation has passed on that. Unfortunately, that was already 2017. So that's, you know, there's going to be 8 years by then. But you could still get them probably on perjury charges. You could still, you know, have and have him explain what exactly he was doing, and then you could set perjury traps for him.
You know, there has to be at the very least, the reconciliation here. We have to find out what happened. George is right, statute of limitations and all of that. I'm not looking for blood. I'm not looking to destroy people. That's what others do. I want to know the truth. I think, and that's very important. Okay, and I've been in the chat chat there. Why is my bookcase so dark? The fuse blew a couple days, about 10 days ago. The fuse was made in China, so I'm having an electrician run down, look for the right fuse. He has found it, and this is the second. He has promised me on the 5th of December that the fuse, which it will probably cost like 90 cents, but he's found it, and he'll install it, and I will have my beloved lights in my bookcase back again. But thank you for noticing it. It's been a sore point for me all along.
As Trump would put it,
that night there just doesn't do it. It just doesn't do it.
As Trump would put it, because it comes from China.
China. That's how it is.
No, I think it's yeah. I mean, there has to be accountability, because it was such a dark period in American history. And again, Brennan played a key role in all of this. And of course, there are people who really don't want any kind of accountability, and that's hence this onslaught against Kash Patel. as a, oh, he's going after his enemies. He's not going after his enemies. I mean, the issue is we need to find out what happened. You can't have this that the security services of a country just decide for themselves who is and who is not entitled to assume office, irrespective of how the voters have voted. And that's what
Well,
happened in this case.
and all the more so, a lot of these people are just careerists, okay, in the DOJ and the FBI and things like that. I mean, so it's Trump is coming back in January. You guys are going to do it all over again. I mean,
Exactly.
why wouldn't they do it? They didn't get
Yeah.
caught.
Right. Exactly.
Why wouldn't they do it?
Exactly. Why wouldn't they do it? I mean, basically, what they did is they could just simply launch investigations without any kind of proper predicate, and then just keep the investigations going, and then set the perjury traps. So even if they can't get anywhere, as of course they knew the whole Russiagate was a hoax. They knew that. That's another part of what needs to be accounted for, is that they knew from the beginning that there was nothing to it. There was absolutely nothing to it. They knew that the Steele dossier was based on absolute rubbish, yet they kept the investigation going. So all of that, that has to be accounted for. And the idea that Comey can just sort of go off and be a professor, as a university professor, the moral courage to be, or whatever it is that he wrote
Don't worry about him. He did a Netflix thing. I'm sure he's taken care of.
He's taken care of. But I always love it when these people, they all become professors. They're sort of university professors. What do they teach? You think of these unfortunate American students. Their parents are paying through the nose for these very prestigious colleges. And they're being taught by Comey, they're being taught by Masha, little Masha, why, I was fired. It's so unfair.
Well, she was a career foreign service officer, wasn't a political appointee. So she has a pension, everyone. She's fine. Yeah. Okay, she's fine. And again, for the umpteenth time, any ambassador or all ambassadors can be dismissed with a snap of a finger. That's the power of the presidency, which means we're going to talk about the pardon right now, George.
And we are. That's exactly what that is, because, of course, yesterday, certainly not to my surprise, President Biden announced that he will be issuing a pardon to Hunter. The only surprise to me was that he did it really with quite a lot of time to spare. I thought he would leave it to fairly close to January the 20th, but nonetheless, he issued a pardon to his son Hunter, and let me just bring this up. Just to the statement that. He issued, the statement he issued. Let me go back. Yeah. So. And let's see. So this is the statement from President Joe Biden, and he says here, today I signed a pardon for my son Hunter. From the day I took office, I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision making, and I kept my word, even as I've watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted.
But that reminds me of someone else, though.
That's right. But the problem with that, of course, right away is that, well, it was your Justice Department. It seems very unlikely that it was selective and unfair, given that it's your Justice Department that investigated him. And in fact, they treated him with kid gloves throughout. In fact, had it been anyone else, they would have been much.
Well, you remember the plea bargaining deal.
Exactly.
That he would be essentially be shielded from prosecution in perpetuity, meaning any crime you commit in the future, you're
Yeah,
absolved of. I mean, that is legal thinking that has never been applied ever. In
exactly.
perpetuity, you're given clemency. It's amazing.
That's right. That's it. That's exactly right. And what happened in in um, in that case was that it was the judge, so the defense counsel and the prosecutors, and they'd come to a very cozy little deal, and they just expected the judge to sign off on it. And it was the judge said, "I've never seen a deal like this." Basically, as you said, immunity for any possible future crimes. I mean, you can't have that. And in fact, the judge asked the prosecutor, "Have you ever seen a deal like this?" And the prosecutor,
Looked down and said,
"No, I haven't." And it says, without aggravating factors like use in a crime, multiple purchases, or buying a weapon as a straw purchaser, people are almost never brought to trial on felony charges solely for how they filled out a gun form. Again, let's imagine he's already been convicted by a
yes.
jury. So he's been convicted, and he's also pleaded guilty to various tax charges in California. So there's a lot of charges that you've already
Well,
convicted of.
I'm not sure what it means. People are almost never brought to trial on felony charges solely. Well, there's a lot of people in prison on gun charges. Okay,
I would have thought so. I would have
yeah.
thought so.
Well, his father, Joe Biden, made that possible.
Yes, that's right. And it's not it's a serious matter. I mean, if you have a gun form, and then you say you don't have a drug problem. I mean, it asks you specifically whether you have drug. I mean, whenever you fill out any kind of an official document and you lie on an official document, you absolutely are criminally prosecuted. And this is a serious lie. It's not just a white lie. It's a serious lie. So I mean, try filling out your tax form and then lying about it on your tax form. Yeah, they're going to bring criminal charges against you. Those who were late paying their taxes because of serious addictions but paid them back subsequently with interest and penalties are typically given non-criminal resolutions. That isn't true, because again, the fact that you pay back whatever you make restitution, that doesn't prevent you from being prosecuted. Just simply saying, "Oh, okay, I stole this person's car, but I gave the car back to him," that still get prosecuted.
Sorry about that.
Are typically given down. So it is clear that Hunter was treated differently. Even the New York Times saying, "Yeah, I don't know about that." I mean, it's hard to make the case that he was somehow treated particularly harshly. The charges in his cases came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. But again,
well, George, it's really kind of pathetic, the number of words the president is using. You know why? Because when you're explaining, you're losing.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's losing very, very badly. Now, everybody knows the president of the United States, rightly or wrongly, I tend to agree with pardoning power.
Yeah, I agree.
Has just the right to do it. Okay. And he doesn't have to explain himself. All he has to do is say, today I pardon my son like a full and free, I gave my son a full and free pardon, full stop. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. And that's what he should have done.
Yeah. No, I
this
agree.
Explaining it's pathetic.
I agree. I agree. And it's something that I fully expected him to do. I don't know who wouldn't have expected him to do.
George, he committed crimes. He had a jury trial. He was given the full breadth of the best legal advice money can buy. Okay, and he was convicted. What do I think about the pardon? Of course, I would pardon my son if I had the power. I'm sorry if it's contradictory, everyone, but that's how life is. It's his son. As decrepit and weird and creepy the guy is, it still is flesh and blood. I'm not surprised by it. Am I happy? Yeah, it's not my son, but it is his son. Okay,
It is his son, exactly.
That's where I land on this here.
Well, I agree. It was obviously he was going to do it, and that's what you do. You have the president has this pardon power. Yeah, he's going to pardon his son. He's going to pardon his close friends. I mean, what's the point of having pardon powers if you can't do things like that? Pardon your close friends. And
anyway, he's got a library to fund. Okay.
Exactly, and of course, in the end, you pardon yourself. I mean, it's if need be, and I think he may end up pardoning himself. But even if he doesn't pardon himself, I am sure Trump will pardon him. It's just that's Trump's personality. I think Trump will pardon him.
The interesting thing there is that it seems to me his gambit up until the time he signed the document, that there was an agreement with the Harris people that if she wins, that she would pardon him, so he wouldn't have to.
Right.
And the hatred that the party has for Joe Biden, and reciprocated by Biden towards the party, he wasn't taking any chances whatsoever. Okay.
I think. Yeah.
And on pardoning himself, for me, the jury is out on that. But what moves me kind of in your direction is that if Joe Biden were to face any kind of investigation, litigation, I think his wife and his family saying, Joe, you're going to have to do it because you're not going to be able to defend yourself if anyone asks you questions, because you're just not going to remember.
Right. But I think, look, I mean, I think, first of all, I think he could pardon himself. I'm not sure that he will, but I think Trump would do it. Trump would say, look, he's 82 years old. He's very elderly. Why put somebody through that? For the last years of his life, going through a tortuous legal process. He's obviously not compromentous. Just let it go. Just pardon him. So I think he can rely on Trump to do that. Trump is not a vindictive person. I mean, he's a counterpuncher, but he's not a vindictive person. So I think
he likes the thrill of the parlay. That's what Trump likes. Okay,
right.
But if he lands a blow, he's not the type of person that's going to get you on the ground and put his foot on your neck. That's not his stuff.
That's not his style. Exactly. Once the fight is over, he tends to be very generous towards his opponents. Like all the Republicans who were once against him and said so many nasty things about him. He now treats them as good friends of his. He's just that. He doesn't hold these kinds of grudges.
But that's really interesting, is that the narrative, the liberal narrative, is that he is vindictive and he's going to want revenge. But it's at the same time, there are reports, everyone, is that there is a rush to the door in the FBI, in the DOJ to get out, because they want to. They're afraid of even being questioned. Okay, let alone being prosecuted. Okay, this PMC crowd, just don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. I'm so sick of these people.
Yeah, no, that's right. I think any president who takes over the DOJ, he fires all the U.S. attorneys, and basically, you're cleaning house. You got your broom. You've all gone. Now I'm going to hire a whole bunch of new U.S. attorneys, and it's in fact also the right thing to do, because people want jobs. People want to move on in their careers. The idea that people just stay on forever and ever, that's wrong. And so I think it's entirely within the powers and the right powers of any president. Essentially, all U.S. attorneys are terminated as of noon, January the 20th, and I'm going to just appoint new U.S. attorneys. Yeah. And then, anyway, so had the plea deal held, it would have been a fair, reasonable resolution of Hunter's case. Well, that's not what the judge said. It's not up to you to make that call. I mean, it was the judge who presided over the case. She didn't think that was a fair, reasonable resolution. So anyway, then he goes on, no reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion. Then Hunter was singled out only because he's my son. But again, when you say that, well, it doesn't matter what the Republicans say. This is a Democratic-run Justice Department. They're not going to be moved by the fact that Republicans are denouncing Hunter. What do they care that Republicans are denouncing him? So the fact that they did go ahead and prosecute Hunter, it shows, they're not going to do it because Biden is their political opponent. I mean, that makes no sense. There has been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. In trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me, and there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough. Now, let's also remember that it's his Justice Department that's gone after his primary political opponents, namely Trump and the people around Trump. I mean, after all, they did prosecute Steve Bannon. They did prosecute
Manafort,
who did time. They actually served time in prison. Hunter hasn't served any time, but they actually did serve time in prison. And that was his Justice Department who went ahead.
There's one caveat here that obviously Joe doesn't want to make reference to, is that Hunter has his own story to tell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So it's putting a bow on top of all of this, because Hunter, given what we know about his lifestyle, and even sober, I mean, he's had a pretty fantastic lifestyle. I mean, just kind of mosey in out of the White House and stuff like that. Oh, reserve his seat on Air Force One when he wants to. He doesn't want to go to prison. And if it push comes to shove, he's going to say, well, I got a story to tell you.
Right.
So it works both ways here. Come on.
But that's the thing. I mean, the case of Hunter is a classic case of influence peddling. I mean, how has Hunter been this successful businessman other than he makes his money by being his father's son? That's the only thing he has to sell. He has no skills at all, yet he's very, very wealthy. How does he get to be wealthy? Well, because he sells his access to his father. And we know from all those accounts of those business meetings where what happened during those business meetings. There was no business discussed. There was a telephone call from Biden. He was then vice president. He would make a telephone call during this meeting and essentially announce himself and say, hey, Hunter, I love Hunter. You do whatever you need to do with Hunter. That was it. That was it. The only purpose of these meetings was to receive that phone call from Biden, and then the money would pour in. And then we have the WhatsApp message by Hunter saying, hey, you better cough up the money. I'm sitting next to my father here, and we're not happy. I mean, so he's pretty much upfront about what he's doing. It's shameless influence peddling.
Yeah, that was it. Is it Dan Goldman?
Levi Strauss.
Yeah, the way he was explaining it. These text messages could be understood this way or that way. I mean, complete buffoonery. I mean, that guy's dangerous. That guy, rich psychopath. Ooh.
Yes, no, I agree. Anyway, for my entire career, I have followed a simple principle: just tell the American people the truth. That definitely is. Remember all the lies that he told about that. He doesn't know anything at all about Hunter's business. Never had anything to do with Hunter. He didn't know who Hunter dealt with. He didn't know anything at all until all those all those photographs showed up. With him meeting his, Hunter's business associates, and then the stories about his telephone calls to these meetings. So I always told the truth. They'll be family.
There's a question here. Is Hunter still getting his monthly check from Burisma? I think Burisma has a lot more problems to deal with in Ukraine than Hunter Biden right now. I doubt it.
Yeah, I think so. Here's the truth. I believe in the justice system, but as I have wrestled with this, I also believe raw politics has infested this process. Yes, it's terrible. Politics and the justice, they don't mix. Yeah.
Yeah, well, then you can. Why don't you criticize Obama and Hillary Clinton for doing it? Okay, Joe. I mean, this. This is just such an end of this is people are laughing when they're reading this. Okay.
Right. And miscarriage of justice. And once I made this decision this weekend, there was no sense in delaying it further. I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. So now, bring up the issue with your father, that you're the father, and then here's the pardon, a full and unconditional pardon, and says, for those offenses against the United States which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period January the 1st, 2014 through December the 1st, 2024. Which is
January 1, 2014.
Right, exactly. So that's 11 years. That's quite a stretch.
It's quite a run.
Yes. So that's 11 years, including but not limited to all offenses charged or prosecuted, blah, blah, by special, and so on. But notice that, which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period. So that's an 11-year stretch. Anything at all that he may have been, any crimes he may have committed during that 11-year stretch, he gets a full and unconditional pardon. And of course, that is the Ukraine. That's the whole Ukraine era.
Yeah, 2014, the coup in February of 2014.
Right. Yeah. So that's when he. Yeah.
No, I'm just, do I like this? It stinks. It stinks to high heaven. Do I accept it? Of course.
Well, exactly. No, I think it was never any question that he would do this. Of course, he was going to do this. So, people are obviously outraged, but it's just a waste of time to be outraged by this because he was going to do this. But what I think is interesting is the period that he has chosen. And remember, we know the Ukraine and everything that's involved in Ukraine, but there's also suggestions, and I don't know, I haven't seen everything that was on the Hunter Biden laptop. Others have, that there were actually much worse things that were on there that may well be very serious crimes, and which again, basically, he gets a pass on those. So that's quite a nice pardon. It's an 11-year stretch. During which I think he committed a number of crimes. Boom, he's got it. He's
yeah,
got
but it's his business primary business partner, and there was also Babalinsky.
Right.
But the people that were in Hunter's orbit, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's been prosecuted for the same crimes.
Yeah, that's really
the rich kid got off.
That's a problem with all these kinds of pardons, which is, you pardon this one person, but the others, your co-conspirators, they don't get a pardon, so they're still liable for prosecution, and that's really always a problem. Like, for instance, Steve Bannon was pardoned by Trump in that whole raising money for building that wall. And I didn't really follow that case, but Bannon was pardoned, but the others who were also part of this conspiracy, fraudulent raising of money, I don't know, they never got a pardon, so they were still continued to be prosecuted. But then of course, in the case of Bannon, the state then I think it was New York State brought those charges against him. So even though he was pardoned for the federal the potential federal crimes, he's still facing state charges for that raising money for the wall. So that's a very tricky one because the president. It's very. I don't know what we don't really know exactly whether the president can pardon for state crimes. I don't think it's difficult. I don't think it's been adjudicated.
I don't know 100%, but I tend to doubt it. Okay.
I tend to doubt it. On the other hand. But there is at least we know there is the supremacy clause. We know basically federal law trumps state law, so he can make that argument. But I don't know whether the Supreme Court has ever ruled.
I just think it would have to be, I think, tested. Okay.
Yes, exactly. It would have to be. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm going to tend to go with you on this one again. I mean, the supremacy clause, that's what the defense will argue.
Right.
Okay.
Right, exactly. So if you've been pardoned for the federal crime, and then they basically brought the
And
same,
it's the same crime.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's the same crime. Essentially, it is the same crime that they brought. But they did it for one reason only, and the reason was that hey, he got pardoned for the federal crime, so let's bring a state crime. So it was essentially malevolently inspired. And I guess I could try to do that with Hunter, because then it's just an abuse. Because then essentially the president loses his pardon power. If then they say, all right, well, he pardoned him, okay, let's bring the same charges under a state statute. I think that obviously is just
I just think
the
that
power of the president.
Yeah, I mean, again, this would involve politicking, but I think all things being equal, someone would see the pardon and say, look, it's done. Okay, this is I mean, do we go down the path of getting rid of the pardon? I mean, these people are saying the norms and all this kind of stuff. Okay, I mean, I was alive. I remember, George. You remember when Nixon was pardoned, and that was very, very controversial.
Very
But
controversial.
people just thought it's time to move on. Okay,
Right.
that was that was the mid '70s. A pretty depressing time in the United States.
It was very, very depressing time, but it was always puzzling to me why Nixon didn't pardon himself. He kind of
I just
left it to Ford.
I just what I know of Nixon, and and George and I are fans. We've never hidden that. It wasn't his character.
It wasn't his character. Yeah,
it's something he couldn't do. Someone today, yeah, they'll do it.
Yeah,
okay?
I agree. He did go to the Office of Legal Counsel and asked, "Can a president pardon himself?" And the Office of Legal Counsel said, "Well, no, he can't. But what he can do, he can step down. The vice president steps in. The vice president becomes president. He can then pardon the president who has stepped down, and then that president who has stepped down can then resume his office of the presidency." So they came up with this convoluted explanation of what the president can do. And but I think also in the case of Nixon, his collapse was so sudden that I don't know that he was really thinking sufficiently about the future. I mean, really, it was over very quickly. It was just in a matter of days from the publication of the June the 23rd tape to his resignation. That just wasn't time, to consider all of these issues.
Anyway, these are all just kind of hypotheticals right now. The real issue here is that it's never been tested. I mean,
Right.
If you read the language when it comes to presidential pardons, it can include himself, okay? But it's never been tested. No sitting president has ever pardoned himself. Right. So this is all hypothetical because it's in this gray area. Yep. Technically, yes. Okay. Would it stand up? I don't know. We've never been there before.
No, we've never been there, and the thing is that I always think that these justices, it would have to be obviously decided by the Supreme Court, but you have to think that you have to look at the political orientation of the Supreme Court, and then you'd have to think of the political orientation of the president who was pardoning himself. So I think if Trump were to pardon himself, and you have the same composition of the Supreme Court as president, I think they would rule and say, yeah, a president can pardon himself. There's nothing in the Constitution that says he can't. But then you think, well, if it were Trump, and then suddenly, we have liberals who are in charge of the Supreme Court, I think they would probably rule against him. I think that, that the Supreme Court that tended to rule against Nixon back in the early 70s, that was quite a liberal court. They didn't, I mean, there were some conservatives on it, but the liberals had a majority, and they tended to vote against Nixon. So he probably was feeling that he wasn't going to take his chances with the Supreme Court. They're probably going to rule against me on whether President pardoned himself.
Since this pardon, which we fully expected, and many other people did too, was going to be interesting as the other pardons. Okay. And I think that's what he's putting a lot of time and effort into. Okay.
Yeah.
And the 1 or 2 hours a day he works, that it's probably devoted almost exclusively to part. Seriously, George.
No,
Seriously.
I agree with you. Yes. Do you have any idea whom else he would pardon? Whom he's thinking of
The
pardoning?
entire Justice Department.
Um,
That's what I would think. Okay, like Jack Smith. Okay,
right.
I
Right.
mean, a lot of these prosecutors. Okay, the prosecutors that went after Trump.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
because these people, they opened up cans of worms that they cannot close.
Right.
So you're all hot and heavy to go after Donald Trump, and then oh, never mind. Well,
Right.
why? Explain to us.
Right. Yeah.
What,
That's right.
what are the antecedents of this? Okay.
Right. No, that's right.
Curious minds want to know.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if it was, I mean, like on the ladies on The View and Rachel Maddow, they all let the cat out of the bag, just make a political deal. Oh, it has nothing to do with the rule of law, right?
That's right. That's right. It was all directed at stopping Trump, and then once that failed, okay, well, we're just going to wrap it up. We're not going to waste any more time on this. And basically, they're just moving to Jack Smith. He's moving to essentially. So he's already dismissed the DC case. And then he said, I'm withdrawing my appeal of the dismissal of the Mar-a-Lago case. That's it. That's gone. And then so all that's left are these state cases. There's nothing's going to happen on the state case.
State level, no.
Case. That's gone. And then the Georgia case is just so mired in scandal.
It's so. God, it's such a circus that whole case. I mean, I've the focus is all the improprieties on the part of the prosecution and the judge. I mean, the charges against Trump are irrelevant, except for Rudy Giuliani still handing over those Rolex watches.
Yeah, that's really that's very
again. These people they create. They're like bulls in a china shop, and they just break everything. Okay,
right.
And there's so many people left holding the bag. Okay,
right.
Well, never mind. We're moving on.
That's right.
I don't have a lot of sympathy for Rudy Giuliani. I think he was very callous. I think he was very arrogant in his behavior, and his foreign policy views, I find.
Oh yeah. No, that's right. But anyway, let's take a look at some of the.
Well, there was a question about, I think, I don't remember exactly, but Trump in Georgia, because we have a lot of stuff going on in Georgia right now. You want to take it away? Were you thinking about that?
No, actually, I was going to look at this one on Rumble from Fahad76, who said, "Why is Putin allowing Israeli strikes in Syria?" You want to answer that first, or?
Because he doesn't want the conflict to he doesn't want to go to war with Israel. Israel doesn't want to go to war with Russia. Okay, we discussed this yesterday. There is a implied agreement. I've never seen anything written down, obviously, but it appears to be an implied agreement that Russia is not going to interfere with Israeli attacks on quote unquote Iranian assets in Syria. Now, is unhelpful and dissatisfying as that is, that's just a very unfortunate common denominator agreement. Okay, now what's going on now, and I have this pit in my stomach, George. I'm going to be talking about this again for a very long time. Is that there's every indication that the Russians do not want to see Damascus fall. Now, what does that mean? I don't know, okay? Because as opposed to 2011 to 2019, 2020, there wasn't a hot war going on in Ukraine, okay? Now, obviously, that is Russia's primary security imperative at the moment. But I feel very confident that Moscow, Tehran, and Damascus are in deep conversation. And we do know, and I don't know to what extent, George and I always try to be careful here, There are Russian airstrikes against these terrorist groups. To what degree that is, the frequency, the velocity, ferociousness, I don't know. Okay, but it appears that it's going on. This is the opening salvo to a problem that was never resolved.
No, I think that's right. And I think the problem has been that Russia under Putin, has for long cultivated good relations with Israel. Putin, I think,
or cultivated not having bad relations with Israel.
Well, I think it's more than that.
Because if you go to the Security Council,
right, but I think it's more than that. I think Putin has spoken quite frequently about his experiences in Leningrad, his experiences knowing Jews in Leningrad, and he is basically he is very philo-Semitic. I mean, no question. I think there are also very powerful Jewish Zionist voices in Russia. I think that who really have a great deal of influence. And I think that is an important ingredient of Putinism. I mean, that somehow of good relations with Israel. Now, the problem arose that, having made that commitment in 2015 to Bashar al-Assad, then that ultimately Israel had a very different agenda, and the more Israel kept pounding and pounding and pounding and hitting Syrian military positions, hitting the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps positions, hitting Hezbollah, that he was weakening Syria. And so, basically, I mean, just looking the other way and saying, well, we don't have a position on this intramural conflict between Israel and Iran. I think it was wrong. I think that it's clear that if you want to save the government in Damascus, I think you have to side with Iran and you have to oppose Israel. But they haven't done that, and I think that
well, and that's the biggest open question right now is how that relationship could change or even sour. I agree with you on that point. Yes,
right.
It remains to be seen. I mean, because you can't have these two balls in the air
right
at the same time for with events happening on the ground.
Right. And then there's a follow up from Fahad 76. Thank you very much for your generosity. He says Russia should have started a campaign in Idlib in 2016 and never should have made a deal with that terrorist Erdogan. And I think we're all kind of generally in agreement with that. It's always understandable. You want to bring any conflict to as speedy end as possible, but it was asking for trouble. I mean, you basically shipping these terrorists from all over Syria into Idlib. It becomes this dumping ground for every single jihadi was now in Idlib.
I absolutely agree, but let's put our minds back into August and September of 2015. The Damascus was on the approaching being taken.
Right.
It was going to fall, and the objective was to make the survival of the Damascus government, and that objective was achieved. Was that enough? Well, obviously not, because we're here today. But I'm trying to remember the mindset then is that we had to stop the flood. You had to start pushing back, and the survival of Damascus was a higher priority than the complete destruction of these terrorist groups. Now, George and I have already spent 2 nights in a row talking about the dangers and the problems of unsolved problems. So I agree with the sentiment.
I agree. That's exactly right. But there was that moment in, I think it was 2018, when Russia and Damascus were planning this offensive against Idlib. And then Erdogan went to the United Nations. He came to New York, and then he made this whole plea to the UN Security Council. Oh, this has to be stopped because there'll be such horrific casualties, mass killings and whatever. And of course, the UN Security Council took the side of Erdogan. And I remember that the woman who was the Karen something or other, who was obviously Karen, who was the UK representative at the Security Council, and she said, "Oh, there are more babies than terrorists in Idlib. The babies. There's always the babies." And so, everyone said, "No, no, you can't possibly attack Idlib. It's all babies. You're going to be killing babies." And then it didn't happen. But that was probably the moment then to roll back, shrink, reduce.
Yeah, but we've mentioned this before, is that destroying that hornet's nest is where were the 31 flavors of jihad, where were they going to go? To Damascus? No. They could go to Turkey, and that's something that Erdogan did not want.
Well,
I mean, a hostage of his own policy, and now he's just going on steroids.
Right. Right. No, that's right. That's right. Anyway, let's look at some other points, and go to our locals page. That was on our Rumbles page. So we now go to our locals. These are our subscribers. So DJ 53144. He's always thinking about the dogs. That's very, very nice of you. He's always thinking, because he knows that the dogs are really very unhappy about the tip jar, and so he's always says, "Yeah, I gotta do something for these dogs." So really appreciate that. Thank you. And then Cynthia, good friend Cynthia, says, thank you, Cynthia, for your generosity. Cynthia says, all the major players from the Middle East conflict are heavily involved in geopolitical maneuvering in the Caucasus. Yes. With Turkey's dramatic step into the ring and the Georgia color revolution attempt in full swing, as well as ongoing Armenia-Azerbaijan tensions with heavy American presence in the former, is it looking like we're inching closer to the Caucasus becoming another theater of the increasingly global new Cold War conflict?
It's always been in play. It's always been.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that
very, very good in our very articulate question.
Extremely good. Yeah, absolutely. And clearly, this is very much Turkey is at the core of all of it. Turkey is at the core of the Middle East, and of course, Turkey is at the core of the Caucasus, and it's without question. I mean, the West has scored a blow with trying to scoop up Armenia, and of course, Armenia is no friend of Turkey, and again, Turkey has mixed relations with the rest. But on the other hand, Turkey is very good friends with Azerbaijan, and again, Turkey uses Azerbaijan for its economic plans. And Azerbaijan, of course, uses Turkey in order to ship.
Israel too. That's the triad.
Israel is very much a part of that with this Israel-Turkey-Azerbaijan alliance. And of course, who's on the other side? Well, on the other side is, of course, Iran, because Iran is very unhappy with what Azerbaijan is doing, and Iran doesn't like this Zangezur corridor, which was going to link the two parts of Azerbaijan across Armenia, which means that essentially Armenia ceases to be any kind of a state, and therefore basically Iran no longer has a buffer against Azerbaijan. So all these players that are involved in the Middle East are clearly very much involved in the Caucasus. So Armenia, again, foolishly, because even when you line up all the players here, you got Turkey, Azerbaijan, Israel on one side, and you got Iran, Russia on the other side. Armenia has gone, against them. I mean, it's so again, Russia and Iran are pretty much, Armenia's only hope for survival. They're the Armenia's only allies, and yet Armenia is making nice with Macron, but Georgia, on the other hand, is holding firm. I mean, so far, Georgia absolutely is holding firm, and the Georgian prime minister said, "We're going to remove, Salome Zorabichvili, the prime minister, the French prime minister of Georgia, we're just going to remove her. I mean, she's not going to be staying on as president. I mean, she's announced that she's staying on. He said, no, we're not staying on. So, Georgia is basically standing firm. We're not going to have a color revolution here.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean the violence that.
The violence is shocking.
I mean, again, we've seen this horrible movie over and over again. But the good thing is that the Georgia Dream Party knows this game plan, this playbook, and they're reacting to it. I have to really admire them, saying, nope, the president is going to go. We're going to put the EU talks on ice right now. Very bold, okay, because they know that, what happened to you. See, Ukraine is so important to what's going on in these countries, because none of them want to go down that path. You have to understand, that part of the world is, Stalin had his during the Civil War. They were all on the short end of the stick, okay. Right. And then during then we had Stalin's purges, and we had the Second World War, which all of these countries were involved in, on the side of the Soviet Union, obviously. But there's and then we had the breakup of the Soviet Union, which was a nightmare for everybody, okay.
Right.
Now you have these outside. You have a drunk named Nancy Pelosi show up in Armenia, rooting them on against their own national interest. Okay, so this whole area is going to get sucked into this, because when you have these great powers, Russia, Iran, Israel is obviously a regional great superpower, and then you have the ambitions and machinations of Turkey. I mean. If this was an alcoholic drink, as a potion, it'd kill you.
But it is, but it's clear that the West has quite a simple formula.
Chaos.
The West, which is to push Russia out of Europe. They succeeded quite well in the immediate aftermath of the Cold War. Russia has been pushed out pretty much from everywhere other than Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. The rest are just basically part of an anti-Russian alliance. Next is that Russia needs to be pushed out of the Middle East. Again, back in the day, Russia, the Soviet Union had allies in the Middle East. It was some time ago, but nonetheless, there were allies that gradually it was reduced themselves essentially to Syria. And now the plan is to push Russia out of the Caucasus. So the whole idea is essentially to encircle, diminish, and degrade and destroy Russia. I mean, that's a simple. The formula is the same. They apply it in continent after continent, country after country, and that's why Russia is always up against it. Has been for a long time, but Russia is always up against it. And I think that clearly. What's happening now in the Caucasus is being directed against Russia. They don't care about Georgia, but what matters to them is got to get rid of Russian influence and presence and power.
Well, even if there isn't any Russian influence and power.
No, there isn't. But nonetheless, it's not a hostile power. I mean, as long as Georgia is not a part of NATO, then I think that's a win for Russia. And I think that's exactly, that's a win for Russia. So therefore, we need to scoop up Georgia into NATO. Anyway, that's so thank you very much, Cynthia. And then and then we have DJ, who says, thank you, DJ, says Assad must have figured the friendship pipeline came with a hefty membership fee to Turkey and the West. So in 2009, he RSVP'd with a firm no thanks. Apparently, friendship isn't worth the price of losing his loyalty card from Moscow's gas club. I think it's a very good point. But I think it really does need to be emphasized here, the extent of the economic pressure that has been applied against Syria. I mean, this has been an ongoing thing. I mean, this the fact that Syria is unable to get proper supply of energy, is unable to make earn income through its oil refineries, and of course, its agriculture is not under the control of the government. I mean, this is all helped to demoralize Syria. I mean, there's demoralization going on. Again, the media are reporting about it gleefully, but they never mention, but what has the West been doing during this time? I mean, if there has been demoralization, well, maybe the West has contributed to the demoralization of the Syrian forces.
Absolutely, and as been mentioned before, the immediate goal is turning Syria into a series of statelets where
Right.
Israel may have sway, Turkey may have sway, empowering the Kurds. The relationship between Damascus and the Kurds has always been very complex, and it's had ebbs and flows. But if you have a very weak Damascus, well, then political events take their course. Okay,
Right.
that's what they want. They want they want to balkanize a country. Okay, Syria.
Right.
That's been their plan for a very long time.
That's right. That's been the plan, and that's clearly what Erdogan has in mind. And you were talking about those migrants. We don't know. Was it 3 million Syrians that he has in Turkey, or 4 million? We don't know the exact number. I am sure he would like to dump a couple of million into Syria right now. To maybe 3 million. Dump them into Syria, wherever. Dump.
And they're not going to be given cell phones and
Right.
hotel reservations. Okay,
That's right. Yeah.
it would be a mass movement of people, and it would be very ugly. But I completely agree with George. Erdogan, if he can't get rid of them into Europe, he'll send them back to Syria. Okay.
But that's, of course, a terrible situation, because, of course, Syria is still under sanctions. And if he goes to Assad and says, why don't you just take these people? With what? What resources does Syria have to house and feed 2-3 million people? He doesn't. He has nothing, because it's not like the sanctions are going to be removed if in exchange for taking 2-3 million. Sanctions will still be in place. Syria can barely feed its population currently, let alone an additional 2-3 million. So I mean, if that's the thinking of Erdogan, I mean, it's an absolute catastrophe. But maybe he's going to try that. Maybe he's going to try and dump these people.
Well, whatever he tries to do, we know for a fact that when you have a flare-up of a conflict of this nature, of its scope, George, you can count on people going to Europe. Okay.
Yes.
We're going to have another wave, and the European Union, and those of you who are in the European Union watching this, explain to us why you can't control your borders. Okay, you want to control Ukraine's borders, but you don't want to control your own. Okay, and your people will pay heavily for it. Okay. Because there'll be a few people in Brussels, London, and Washington rubbing their hands. Oh, we're sticking it to Assad. We're sticking it to it. But you people are going to pay the price, and you know what I'm talking about.
No, that's exactly right. They're just going to, they're going to head north. Why wouldn't they? I mean, there's nothing for them.
They're not going to. You think they want to go to Moldova? No. Germany. We want to go to Germany. We want to go to Italy. We want to go to Spain. We want to go to the UK.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we'll end up in France, and in 2060, it'll be a Muslim country.
Yeah. That can happen very quickly. We're talking about such large numbers that a complete transformation of Europe could happen very, very quickly. Anyway, thank you so much, DJ. And then Judy Hotchkiss, a good friend. Thank you, Judy, for your generosity. And Judy says, hopefully, Tulsi Gabbard will have Trump's ear on this. She will be giving him his daily intel brief. Well, that's interesting. And that, of course, brings us to the issue that, we didn't discuss. I mean, when we're talking about Kash Patel, which is, can Trump really see through these nominations? You know, the nominations that are actually interesting and important and could spell change in the U.S. government. Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr. Can Trump get them through? I have my doubts, but that's what it matters. With can he get Tulsi Gabbard, who would be an important appointment? Can he get her through?
No. Marco Rubio is the only major figure that's going to escape to this. I don't know. I don't see any of them.
Right.
Of these high level positions. I don't see it. I'm sorry. I hope I'm absolutely wrong. But
well, I agree.
I mean, Matt Gaetz, a lot of things he said and in depth, I think was really great. Other things, I want to stay away from that. But what's important about that is that Trump didn't go to bat for him.
Yeah.
And was that intentional? That was like a stratagem, I mean, for goodness sake, the guy resigned.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think what was troubling about the Gaetz thing is that, okay, so there are all these stories, unsavory stories, but the case was pretty thin. I mean, it's like from little we know, he was really more the victim than the perpetrator. He was somebody who is a criminal, clearly, who is in prison, was making all these allegations about him, and what criminals do in order to have their sentence commuted or sharply reduced. So he was really the victim of a criminal enterprise. I think he could have if got through if Trump had gone into bat for him, but he didn't do it, and I think that was quite shocking that Trump gave up within 2 days. That was fast, and that's why.
I mean, in considering George, I mean, even when his name was announced, you and I thought this is going to be a bloodbath because he's going to have to spend political capital to get what he wants. You and I said that right at the top. I mean, that he had to do the Johnson effect. He said, I want a victory, and you're gonna follow my you're gonna ride on my coattails. Okay.
Right. Yeah. No. That's it. And because his margin is so narrow that we know what's going to happen in the case of Tulsi. There's going to be a huge campaign launched saying she's pro-Assad, she's supporting Assad, and she's pro-Putin. She's repeating Putin's talking points. This is going to be this is a massive campaign. So I mean, it's already ongoing, obviously, but once she starts testifying before the Senate, every single senator, including the Republican senators, they're all going to ask her, why are you repeating Putin talking points? What were you hoping to get by visiting Assad in Syria? And she'll say, yeah, but Nancy Pelosi also went to Syria.
And John McCain.
But his was more despicable because John McCain actually, he consorted with terrorists, but she actually did go and talk to Assad. But the problem with that is that argument doesn't cut any ice because it's a tu quoque defense. Oh, somebody else did it. Well, what does it matter? Two wrongs don't make it right. So I think that they're going to mount this attack against her, and she only needs to lose 4 votes, and she will lose those 4 votes. I think these horrible creatures, these Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Mitch McConnell, who hates, loathes, detests Trump, and he said he's going to use these remaining days in the Senate to sabotage the a kind of Trumpian MAGA America First foreign policy. That's what he said. That's my only priority, is to destroy America First foreign policy. So he's obviously going to vote against Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, there's just
you just made my case because I don't think they're going to get through. As a matter of fact, I'm going to even be more hard line on this. I wonder if there'll even be hearings for some of these people.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess if Trump, was really determined to fight, he could make the recess appointment. I mean, he could just make that recess appointment. When the Senate is in recess, just shove her in. But that requires, you have to then fight. I mean, you have to fight for that, because that will obviously be very controversial if he makes that recess appointment. But I mean, I think in theory that could be done. I mean, George W. Bush did that with the loathsome John Bolton.
Yeah, he
So
was never technically. He was like temporary ambassador to the
that's right,
United
exactly, because it was a recess
States. He
appointment.
never really officially the ambassador.
Right, because there was no way that he knew there was no way the Senate was going to endorse Bolton, even though now Bolton is a kind of a liberal hero. He was always on CNN or MSNBC, but in those days he was a reviled figure. Anyway, so DJ then says the Minsk peace accords were like mincemeat pie served at a dinner party. Everyone knew there was no meat in it, but they all nodded, smiled, and said, "Oh, this is just divine. Such a bold choice, leaving out the substance entirely while sneaking bites to the dogs under the table." All right, I mean, I guess it's a.
To be fair, but in terms of substance, yeah, I agree in retrospect. But to be fair, we have to remember this: it stopped that conflict. At least it dramatically reduced it, because a sore point for me during that period is that 14,000 people were killed, and they were killed by the Ukrainian regime. Okay, and it's still a little murky because the Ukrainians don't want to admit it. But with the help of Russia, the Ukrainian army was defeated because they had to stop the anti-terrorist operation. And Poroshenko was very, very gleeful about how our children will go to school, but the children of the Donbass will be in their basement. Okay, and at least it created more or less a frozen conflict. So the impetus of the Minsk process, that is a good outcome. Okay, but as a process in toto, I agree with the description.
That's right, and I think we just repeat again. A frozen conflict does not serve Russia's purpose. It never has. The whole point of a frozen conflict is to prepare for the next round.
Turn that roulette wheel. Throw that ball in. Yep, exactly.
Exactly. Just and that was always the case. Now it's possible. Let's say if we're going to be charitable, and I don't know that we should be charitable, but let's say we're going to be charitable. Let's say Angela Merkel, and we talked about Angela Merkel, and it's possible that she wanted this fighting to stop, and she didn't have in mind restarting it again in 5 or 6 years, even though she suggested that in that interview she gave to Die Zeit last year, or maybe 2 years ago, that was her intention. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe she did want good relations with Russia. That wasn't the view of the Americans. It was the Americans, because the Americans did see the frozen conflict as the mechanism to restart it again. So it's possible that she did think, hey, let's just freeze it, and then maybe everyone's going to forget about it. There'll be some kind of reconciliation. That may have been what she was thinking. That wasn't what the Americans were thinking. It's never what the Americans are thinking. And I think and it was the American view that eventually prevailed.
Agree.
Yeah.
But Angela, a word to the wise: the more you talk, the worse history will remember you for.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You had to really get, shut up.
Yes.
And take a walk in the forest, because the more you talk, the more you look to be culpable for a lot of major problems that accumulated under your time in power.
That's right. Anyway, so and then Judy continues and says, Trump pardoned his son-in-law's father, then nominated him for ambassador. So that's the Jared Kushner's father, who had been prosecuted by Chris Christie, who was the U.S. Attorney of New Jersey at the time, and he went sent to prison. He went to prison, thanks to Chris Christie's zealous prosecution, and that, of course, ensured that Chris Christie would play no role whatever in the Trump administration, because Jared naturally said, "I'm not going to have Chris Christie here."
Yeah, it wasn't fat shaming everyone. It was Jared Kushner.
That's right. But then Trump in 2020, really almost when he was already out the door, pardoned Jared's father. So he got pardoned, and now he's going to be the U.S. ambassador to Paris. The French are not happy, but the thing about Trump is that he really doesn't care what the French think. I mean, that's so. I'm reading, Politico or the Guardian. French are not really happy about the appointment of Kushner as the U.S. ambassador.
Well, I mean,
saying,
Trump's attitude.
I don't want you to be happy.
No, Trump's attitude is, you can hold my beer, okay? I think that's just kind of a swipe that he got. He probably won't ever think about it again. He says, "Who can we? Yeah, the French. Let's do it to them." Because I'm sure Jared Kushner's father could pick any capital that he wants.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
And he probably could go in Paris, and so why not Paris? Okay.
That's right.
Because he could have said Berlin, he could have said London, and he would have got it.
I think so, but I think it's particularly galling to the French, because Kushner is obviously such a disreputable character. So he's being sent to France. The French kind of expect to be treated with respect. Some grand waspy person, some Dean Acheson type would be sent as the U.S.
Caroline Kennedy.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody, the cream of the American waspy elite. Caroline Kennedy.
Even probably Chelsea Clinton.
Well, Chelsea Clinton, exactly. But this person is just so disreputable. I mean, it's not just that he went to prison, but I mean, it was a very sordid. I mean, really, these convictions were really sordid. And that's it. He's giving it to them. He despises Macron. I mean, it's a problem for him. He absolutely despises Macron. He always has. So I think he just wants to stick it to him. One thing I
just remember when I don't know how many times Trump went to Paris, but one particular time, and Macron with his wife or mother, who, however he's related to this woman, but she was wearing a pretty really nice dress, and I mean, considering her age, she's really well kept, well preserved. And Trump, there's a picture of him looking at her ass and like smiling. It's like, well, at least he's got a wife. He's got a looker. He's got a trophy wife, even though everyone thinks it's his mother.
That's right. Yeah. No, that's true. And that's the kind of thing that Trump respects. So yeah,
that's right. Well, I just wanted to throw it to you, George, because you've mentioned it before. Did Pam Bondi get that job because she's pretty?
Yes, I think so. I don't see any particular logic to it, other than she's good looking, and he does have a particular weakness for good looking women. I think a number of the women that he has hired don't seem particularly obvious for their talents, but they're good looking, and I think that's always been and a problem for him. And I'm not saying that Bondi is going to be a problem, though I don't think she's going to shake up the DOJ. I mean, that's not who she is.
I doubt it.
Yeah, that's not, she's not going to do that. And she incidentally will be Kash Patel's boss. So whatever Kash Patel would want to do, she's entitled to just put a veto on it. So she's not going to do that. But she's good looking. But the problem with him was that he hired a lot of good looking women in his first term. All of them, every single one of them, stabbed him in the back. Absolutely. They're there, they're very pretty, and boom, the moment they got their chance, they got their knives out for him. So, I think he acquired this habit, I think, in his real estate business. How do you move merchandise? you hire a pretty girl, whatever, whether it's apartments or, get people into casinos or vodka or whatever, you hire pretty girls, and that's how you move merchandise. I think he learned that from his business.
Yeah, okay. I see the comment. Yes, I'm aware that Macron's wife was his school teacher. Okay. I'm
Yes.
not going to go any further than that. I mean, the stories around that, from all I know, she's probably a nice person. What do I care? Okay, what do I care? Okay? But I mean, some of the things that have been said about her, I think, is just absolutely cruel and just way beyond the pale. I mean, why?
Right.
Who cares? Okay.
I think you're thinking of Candace Owens.
Yeah, I just, what's the point? Why?
No, exactly. That's exactly right. But I think that going back to this, yeah, I think Trump just wanted to stick it to the French. He's given them that. But of course, if you're rich, it's always to be an ambassador. It's very helpful to have a lot of money, because ambassadors have to do a lot of entertaining, and while they get, obviously the government foots the bill for most things, but you also have to shell some money out. So I think always ambassadors to Paris, they have to shell out money for something.
Before I was made persona non grata by the powers that be in the West, I went to these embassy parties, consulate parties. Pretty shabby.
Really? Okay. But which embassies?
Oh, in European capitals. Okay, it's nothing to write home about. I'm agreeing with George, because Kushner's father is gonna like, when this needs to be completely refurbished. I can't live in this dump. Okay, I mean, what? Come on. And so these are the kind of people that would go into their own pocket to say, just redo this room.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the ambassador's bedroom. Really?
No.
No. We're going to get this fixed. I'll take care of it. Okay. Because the embassy buffet is going to be all right. I want to go to the ambassador's dinner in a posh place in London.
Yeah.
In Paris, not the embassy.
Right. No, I agree with you, and I think
the air conditioning doesn't even work properly.
Right.
Okay?
Because
the cooks they hire. I mean, this is McDonald's.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, because if you're going to do that, if you're going to say, okay, well, I had this reception, you're going to have to justify everything, to the State Department. Imagine you have to fill out forms and said, well, we had this reception and so many people came, and then we spent all this money. They're going to go through the numbers and say, well, did you really have to invite so many people? So if you don't want to go through that, you have to kind of shell out some money of your own.
George,
take people to the restaurant.
Do you think Kushner's father wants to officially represent the United States of America? No, it's going to be business deals. Like, we got people coming in from the UAE. Come on, get them out here, okay? We're going to have to put shell out for these people.
Right.
That's what Jared Kushner is all about. I mean, he left the White House with some of the spectacular deals in the Gulf. Okay,
that's right.
Don't you think? His father is a pretty corrupt guy. He went to prison for it. Okay. But he got a pardon. You think that's going to change his behavior? No.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you. That's exactly how he's going to use his new position, and moreover, all sorts of people around the world know that's how he's going to use his position. Can you imagine all these emirs from the Gulf states? They sniff out money and business opportunities. They're going to be hightailing in Paris.
Okay, I don't need a French translator. I need an Arabic one. Okay.
One thing I was going to ask you: Trump hired this Lebanese American businessman who is Tiffany Trump's father-in-law. Do you know anything about him? Because I tried to find something about him on the internet. I didn't see.
Well, the apologist for genocide in the Trump orbit. The only thing I've gotten from this story is that he'll make sure Trump understands what's going on. It'll be an inside track.
I see. Okay.
It doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, considering the cast of characters that he wants to bring in with him. I mean,
Right.
a distant relative of someone is going to, have the ear of the president. Come on, give
It's
me a
very
break.
strange because he's going to be special envoy to the Middle East, and so what's his qualification?
Well, I think Mike Huckabee tends to think he's going to be that guy. Okay,
Well, probably.
Ambassador to Israel.
But at least the Keith Kellogg, the special envoy to Ukraine, at least that made some sense. But then, so that's why I looked around and say, well, what has this guy done? Has he made any kind of speeches, written anything on the Middle East, other than well, he's Lebanese, he's a Lebanese American, and he's Tiffany's father-in-law. So hey, give him this this grand title of a special envoy to the Middle East. I mean, because I can't see.
Well, these historically speaking, these envoys don't really mean anything. Okay, I mean, can you think of an envoy that really made a difference? I can't. Okay.
No, I don't think so. I agree. But I'm no. I mean, I suppose I mean, I guess it just depends on whether you have the president here. I mean, that's all it matters. I mean, either you have some influence with Trump or whoever is the president, or you don't.
Well, I mean, George, speaking to that issue here, Jared Kushner apparently will not have an official position in the White House.
Right.
But does that mean he still won't be in the West Wing on a regular basis? Come on, you guys. And because anyway, Trump understands that Jared is not the flavor of the month for the MAGA base. Okay?
No, then they really didn't like him. They absolutely didn't like him at all.
Okay,
right from day one, because he and Ivanka just moved in as if somehow they were entitled to. They played no role at all in the 2016 win, and suddenly they were, seizing. They had an office in the White House, and they were dealing with this issue and that issue. It was just outrageous. I mean, it's the worst kind of nepotism. And then of course, when it came to all sorts of issues that mattered to MAGA, such as immigration, they took a terrible position. So you're absolutely right. Officially, Jared is not going to be given a title. That doesn't mean that he's not going to play a role in the administration.
Well, who at the entrance of the White House is going to say no to Jared walking in? Okay, right. I think he'll just mosey around as he wishes. Okay,
exactly.
I don't think Trump will be bothered by it either.
No, no, that's right.
Anyway, imagine he opens the door. Hey, what are we talking about? I'll sit over on the couch over here.
That's right. And the number of issues that he got himself involved in. I mean, it's like one, he got involved in the trade issue. He obviously got involved in the Middle East issue, the immigration issue. One problem after another, and somehow Jared was at the center of it. Again, without any obvious qualifications. He wasn't even very successful in the world of real estate. I mean, at least his father-in-law Trump had some success in real estate, but Jared really wasn't even very good at that. I mean, he owned a building in Manhattan, which was losing money.
I think it was this year, at the beginning, mid-year. One of the rare moments that he actually, I think it was with Bloomberg, I could be wrong, and he was talking about oceanside properties in northern Gaza. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, this is revolting. This is just revolting. Yeah. But it's nonchalant, It just.
Yeah. That's right.
I don't want to be a wet towel, everybody, but this whole issue with Gaza and Lebanon and Syria, Trump is in for a ride. Okay, he's in Ukraine.
Yeah.
He wants to work tariffs, industrial policy, China, immigration. This is where he is. Look at his campaign.
Right.
And George and I commented endlessly is that he doesn't read speeches. He just talks about what's on the top of his mind.
Right.
And what did he talk about? The things I just mentioned.
Right.
And he's going to be sucked into this vortex.
Yeah.
Doesn't look good.
No, I agree. But anyway, I think our time is up, Peter. I think we've had excellent questions, excellent comments, and ideas. Always very stimulating. So thank you, everybody who raised all sorts of issues, which helped clarify things for us. Thank you, everybody who contributed to the Hounds tip jar.
I want to say something before we forget. Because in past live streams, there were very many comments about my use of vapes. I haven't used it at all in the last 2 live streams. I am doing a pouch. You might probably notice that, but I appreciate the concern for my health, and so I'm doing my very best to wean myself off of this, and hopefully won't see it again. Thank you.
Huh. Okay, well, that's good. I didn't realize
live stream because of this live stream.
Okay, I didn't realize you were curtailing your use of vapes. So, but that's very good. But anyway, thank you, everybody, and thank you for this excellent this concern for Peter's health. That speaks very well for everyone. Even though the dogs say the only thing that speaks well is what clinking of coins. I don't care about anything else. So that's just they're very dogged. They're dogged dogs. Anyway, thank you so much. And tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time, I do my solo live stream. Hope to see you then. All the best. See you. Good night.